Greetings, hello. This is the Crusader Historian for another video on the history of the Russia and Ukraine war. And yeah, this is the next video. Apologize, it's been a while. Thanks for your patience. I'm thinking I now have a system work together. I know I keep saying it. Here's the thing. At least it's not a year since this next video is out. So we are getting there. We are getting there. To tell you the truth, a lot of the problem was trying to give a simplified account of the history up until we get to the more recent, and I'm using recent in quotation stuff, so I was trying to simplify everything. But this video is going to contain a little bit of heavy stuff. Next video is going to start to contain some heavy stuff. So hopefully, and also the time lengths are going to be easier to manage, hopefully. Anyway, let's begin. So, as we review for last time of the ancient and medieval video, Russia and Ukraine had a shared history and were united until the arrival of the Mongols, like the Kievan Rus. I mean, they did divide into principalities, and they spent some time fighting to get against each other and working together, but they had this shared heritage. As this goes to the next point, while the Kievan Rus, or the legacy of it, survived in the form of successor states under Moscow, like the Grand Duchy of Moscow, the principality would hold a lot of sway over the successor states. Ukraine, what would be called the Ukraine, like the Principality of Kiev and the surrounding areas, later fell under the sway of Poland, and talked about how, thanks to the autocratic rule of Ivan IV and his successor, they created a strong state of Russia, which allowed it to survive despite it being taking numerous hits. Well, at the same time, Ukraine devolved into like a borderland area, and Ukraine actually means borderland. First off, I must say, last time we left off, the Romanov dynasty took power, and they had notable czars and tsarenas, and a lot of them. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to go through a few which I think are going to be should be of note to give a brief context on their history. And yeah, so, but keep in mind, this is the second dynasty of Russia that took over after the Rurik dynasty. Our first czar on the list was Peter the Great. He expanded Russia's border, and he launched a cultural revolution that replaced the traditional and medieval political systems with ones that was modern and scientific, based on radical enlightenment, and it was westernized. He also expanded Russia's borders. So that's where it is from him. I'm sorry for all my hesitation. I will be honest, I like this guy the least, because he enacted a lot of reforms. He brought westernized ideas to Russia. Modernizing it, getting technology and stuff Technology, economics, and stuff I can respect. Like, he would go all over the place and get these ideas and use it to help modernize Russia, to make Russia strong and powerful. But at the same time, he borrowed cultural stuff from the West, particularly the French. Like, this was how the French influence, like influenced Russia. And I will be honest, I actually utterly despise the French, especially the French court during this period. So I mean, that's my 2 cents. I mean, he did strengthen Russia, and he was brutally effective at it. Another one of Tsar or Tsarina in this case was Catherine the Great. She launched some reforms. She inoculated a lot of Russians from smallpox. She tried to enact some more reforms to create a constitutional government, but many Russians could not understand it. And when she was older, she was forced to walk back on them because her reforms were causing chaos. But another thing is she actually took Poland. So that's another thing that happened. Alexander the First, he is noted as the Tsar who defeated Napoleon, like Napoleon's march to Moscow. He was the Tsar of the Napoleonic Wars and helped defeat Napoleon. Nicholas the First, he was a Tsar during the Crimean War, which was fought Russia versus the Ottoman Empire, and the British Empire actually, and a few other states actually fought alongside the Ottoman Empire. Um, how did the war happen? Well, there were other things, but the pretext was Russia took upon itself as a protector of Eastern Christians, and the Ottoman Empire was not nice to Eastern Christians, and so that war was one of the other things that was launched. Now we're at Alexander II, and he was a reformer. He was called the Liberator by his people. One of his reforms was the emancipation of the serfs. Um, and so, yeah, the serfs were already free before the Russian Revolution. The reason why they did not do so much was because the Russian communities are fairly isolated from each other, so we take safety for granted, but it was dangerous to travel from one place to another. And unfortunately for him, he was assassinated by a socialist. And ironically, he was assassinated the day where he was planning on making more reforms for Russia so it could become a constitutional monarchy. This had an effect on his son, Alexander the Third, and he was an autocrat as well. He rolled back some of his father's reforms, but not all of them. He had no faith at all in a constitutional government. I think that makes sense over what happened to his father, and those that assassinated his father were planning on assassinating him. So you could understand why he would be not have any faith in this. The guys were caught during his reign, but it did not stop him from being an autocrat. However, he Under his rule, Russia fought in no major wars and thus was called a peacemaker as a result. And he was the creator of the Russian-French alliance. His son, well, is going to be the primary czar in our next episode, because what happens to him is important. So, yeah. What happened, what's going on in Ukraine? Well, Ukraine was under the Cossack Hetmanate during this time, fighting between Poland, Austria, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire, but after a while they faded out, and their government was sort of a military republic, as in officers were only officers could be elected. But yeah, they fell under the sway of the Austrian Empire and Russia by the time of the Napoleonic Wars. Cossacks were used in the Russian army. Tsar Alexander II, a few of his Cossack guards were killed during an assassination attempt. So yeah, Ukraine did not really exist at this point. Technically speaking, the Carpathian Russians in Austria-Hungary, who were considered the first true Ukrainians during the end of the 1800s. The only thing that's significant is they denounced Orthodox Christianity for Roman Catholicism. But that was it. That was it. They may have considered themselves different because culturally they had cultural ties to Russia, but they converted to the dominant religion of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. However, there was no true Ukraine. Ukraine did not exist. And so, again, why is this important? Well, Russia tried to make reforms, but the strong state made it very hard to do so, which I think you can see with the rather basic things I have. Russia made some reforms, but it was not successful. The state was so big, the nation was so big, the region was so big, they weren't able to. And as you can guess with how often Russia deferred itself to Europe, they saw themselves as Europeans, but they always lagged behind Europe in terms of ideas and technology. And as I said when we went to this next one, Ukraine technically did not exist. The idea of Ukraine did not exist during a period. The Ukrainians who lived there did not see themselves as Ukrainians. They saw themselves as Russians. They saw themselves as some Hungarians, Austrians. They saw themselves maybe as something else. But the idea of Ukraine did not exist back then. So, anyway, the next video is going to touch about the origins of Ukraine as a concept. As for sources, I'm sad to say I used Wikipedia as most of my source material, but in my defense, Wikipedia is kind of useful as a basic startup. However, for my primary source I have for one of the things I said is right here. It's something about the Russian faith. This article talks about the history of Russian Christian faith in Europe, and yeah. Anyway, please, thank you for taking your time with this video. I'm sorry if it seems jumbled or rushed. I'm doing the best I could. Making videos is a muscle. The more you do it, the better off you are. The less you do it, the worse it gets. Anyway, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't, and share this video. I wish you the best. Farewell.